Good afternoon and welcome to our Mulberry Talent Partners leadership conversation today. I'm going to give everyone just a few moments to begin logging on. Okay. As people begin to roll in, again, welcome. My name is Laura Back. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events here at Mulberry Talent Partners. We are a full-service staffing and recruiting agency headquartered in Portland, Oregon, with an office also in Silicon Valley. We specialize in the professional placement of human resources, professional and financial office, payroll and operations positions for direct hire, temp to hire, and contract roles. I would encourage you to check us out online at mulberrytalent.com, where you can see all of our previously recorded and upcoming leadership conversations, as well as check out our full suite of service offerings and our new candidate profiles feature, where you can browse and search for specific candidates. Today, we are joined by Lauren Francis, who is our fabulous founder and president. Lauren founded Mulberry Talent Partners in June of 2017, bringing over 25 years of talent acquisition and entrepreneurial experience. And we are so pleased to welcome Kirsten Meneghello today, who is the owner and principal of Illumination Coaching. Before we go on ahead and jump in, Kirsten has so generously offered for us to do a giveaway today of a personalized 5 behaviors development profile, which would include a one-hour session with Kirsten. We'll announce the winner of that in an email out to attendees later on this week, which will also include the recording of today's webinar. Without further ado, I'll go on ahead and pass it over to Kirsten and Lauren. But first, I want to mention we'd like this to be as interactive as possible. We would encourage attendees to use the chat function, sending out messages to panelists and attendees. You can direct your questions there and any comments that come in, because we'd love for this to be very interactive. So without further ado, Kirsten and Lauren.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, Kirsten. We are so happy to have you on today. And Kirsten and I have known each other for several years, and we are so pleased that you are able to join us for our newly launched leadership webinar series. So we'll let you take it away from here and enjoy, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for having me today. Let me get my screen sharing happening here. There we go. We good and live?
We are.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about the challenges that come along with virtual teamwork. And specifically, we're going to talk about some of the challenges, the model that will help you to create more effective teamwork, and also an exercise that you can use for your own team or teams in your organization to build more trust and cohesiveness. All right, so need to move to the next slide. There we go. Oh, sorry. So let's begin about talking about the changing team landscape and what's been in store for us this year. During this year, we've seen an astounding level of disruption, with COVID shifting many workplaces to work from home, having super intense conversations around systemic racism, the presidential election, and mental health. Add to that the explosion of technology that's impacted each of us uniquely and driving innovation at an astounding pace. Things like using Zoom and WebEx every day now as a tool, telehealth appointments with our doctors, the way we used to do things are completely different now, right? And so the technology is playing a big role in that as well. The second change we're seeing is this more and more global collaboration. So we're working with team members maybe in different countries, on different continents, different time zones. They all come with their own different cultures and maybe different languages too. So that's been a big change. And finally, the organizational makeup. In most of our organizations, we're seeing more and more diversity in a vast number of ways. And often in organizations, we can be working on teams with up to 4 different generations on a team. And so that also lends itself to just different ways of working together, because there are different expectations that come with those generations as well. Sorry, I'm getting my mouse to work very, very gingerly to not flip too many slides at once. So through a recent workplace study, Wiley Workplace Learning Solutions asked a number of people, what effect is a changing team landscape having on your organization and its people? And what they heard was a number of things. A lot of people said there's too much communication happening. Other people said there's not enough communication happening. Our goals are misaligned. We don't know what our priorities really are. We're working in silos and individual teams rather than in the larger whole for the organization. And so there's just a lot of confusion and frustration that comes along with this new virtual team environment. And people reported that they're spending a lot of time just trying to figure out how to work with one another instead of having to get the work done. And this really impacts team culture and the ability for organizations to meet their goals. So ultimately, in order for it to build an effective team culture, we need everyone in the organization to have a common skill set for teamwork. And this skill set is really crucial for us to be effective. But the reality is that most people aren't trained well in effective teamwork. We don't learn this at home. We don't learn it in school. Honestly, you remember those projects you worked on where like maybe you were the one person that led the team and other people skated by? We've all been on teams like that. Or through trial and error in the workplace too. So add to that, teamwork's already challenging, and now we're in a virtual environment. Okay, that can make it even more so, right? So I'd like to ask you what your experience has been. Do you feel like teamwork has been more or less challenging in this environment, or is it about the same for you? So please go ahead and type your answer in the chat and give a reason why. Just give a few words as to why that's showing up for you, how that's showing up. So more challenging. Patricia, can you share why it's been more challenging? About the same. Lauren, you can jump in here too.
Yeah.
Although your team's on the call with us.
I think sometimes too, it's the organization of the team and the leadership around that.
Say more about that.
Well, just, I've just heard a lot of these challenges, particularly when people are onboarded into a virtual environment.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to understand their role and the different people, and it's just been not an easy transition for a lot of people.
Certainly when you're onboarding, you're coming into a culture that's already a team that's already established too. Like, how does that play out? That's got its own levels of challenge there too. So let me look at some of the notes. So must be very deliberate, Nicole says. Yep. Poor communication, unclear role. So if things are uncertain, it's more challenging. Staff uncomfortable with Zooms and the tech piece. You might have different levels of technology experience on your team, right? So this can be super overwhelming for people. A lot of distractions, Lily says. Yep, that's very true, especially for working parents. Pros and cons. So it's interesting. People, looks like for the most part, it's more challenging in different ways. And then a lot of people said about the same too. So good to know. My little chat bar out of the way there too. Thank you for sharing that. So you may be surprised to learn that while virtual teams have unique challenges of their own, the underlying principles of good teamwork are actually the same. And so that's why today we're going to talk about the 5 behaviors approach. This model was created and based on the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And some of you may be familiar with that as well. Maybe have already read it. This book has been a perennial bestseller, and it's created a new standard for how leaders and organizations think about teamwork. I had the privilege of meeting Pat last year at his national conference, where over 800 corporate executives and consultants met and learned and talked about teamwork and organizational health. And there were executives from Southwest Airlines, Boeing, and Ford Motor Company, all using these concepts in their organizations. It was a pretty special experience to be able to share these concepts and hear how organizations are really using them in the day-to-day world. The 5 behaviors learning experience we're talking about today was developed by Wiley Workplace Learning Solutions in conjunction with Pat back in 2014. Wiley took Pat's model and formulated it into a learning experience that includes personalized assessment-based learning with engaging facilitation to bring the concepts to life. And this is a little bit of his model that I'm going to go into right now. So the 5 behaviors teamwork model is really simple. Like, you could even say it's simplistic. But the challenge with it is that it requires courage, and it requires discipline to practice these behaviors over time to really form a productive and cohesive team. So the model, as you can see, it's based on a pyramid shape, And the core foundation, the core behavior of this model is trust. And we're talking specifically here about vulnerability-based trust. Because once we have trust on a team, we can then engage and go up the pyramid to engage in healthy conflict, and then commit to the best ideas that emerge from that conflict, hold one another accountable to what we commit to, and eventually result in those incredible shared results that all teams are striving for, right? So let's talk about trust. Members of great teams trust each other on a fundamental emotional level. And we're not talking about predictive trust where we can predict how a person's going to show up based on how they've shown up in the past. It's rather based on that ability to be vulnerable and open with one another. And this has been borne out by a study they recently did at Google. Some of you may be familiar with that, and learned they were looking at Google for like, what were the underpinnings of the most productive teams? What was that equation that built these amazing teams? And what they found was the most common factor was having that psychological safety. And that's based on being able to bring our whole selves to work, being who we truly are, kind of unfiltered, and that we're safe. We're safe to speak up and share ideas and be who we really are at work. And we can do that by modeling vulnerability to our teammates. We can say, I'm not good at that. I need help with this. Or I'm sorry, I really screwed up there. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, or I dropped the ball. Or even admitting I don't know the answer. That's another way to show vulnerability as well. So that's our base foundational level behavior. And then next we move to conflict. And we really want to master conflict. Many of us go, ooh, I don't like that word. It's got a negative connotation. And I understand that, because some of us have not necessarily seen conflict show up in a healthy way. Again, haven't seen it in the workplace or in our own homes as children. And so how do we engage in conflict in a healthy way that's respectful of one another? And so what we're trying to focus on here is not these mean-spirited attacks that many of us sometimes associate with conflict, but instead the pursuit of truth. We want to disagree around ideas, have a business problem we're trying to solve, and bring all those great ideas to the table so we can wrestle with them and come up with the best solution for our team and our business. And so that's why when we have that trust, we're able to engage in that serious conflict that's going to be helpful and help us break through. And the problem is, if we don't really talk about what's important and we have those side after the meeting conversations, inevitably they kind of fester and kind of grow into much larger problems that we want to avoid. Why it's so important to bring those up, and when we can all talk about them, talk through them. This leads us to our next behavior, which is achieving commitment. And so just imagine you've wrapped up your weekly team meeting and everyone brought their best ideas to the table. You engaged in productive conflict. And so even if your idea wasn't adopted, the team all agrees, Jose's idea is the best. Fantastic. You can get behind Jose's idea and move forward with the team because you feel like your idea was heard and vetted and was taken seriously. So again, we engage in that conflict and then they go, oh, I can get behind this. I can commit to our team's decision. So achieving commitment involves two things. It involves clarity and buy-in. So clarity means we know who's doing what by when. So when you leave a meeting, everyone's clear, this is my part, my role, what I'm doing, what the deadline is due, when it's due. And buy-in means that, again, we're going to commit and get behind the decision that our team's made. We're not going to just nod and smile and then, go down the hall and do whatever it is we wanted to do. We're really going to put those resources and make sure that we're fully supportive of that decision. So clarity and buy-in are important with commitment. And then the next one, accountability. This one's really, really tough for people, individuals and teams, to embrace accountability. And we're talking about peer-to-peer accountability here. So members of a team holding each other accountable to what you've committed to. Many teams, we want the leader to hold everybody on the team accountable. And while they have the ultimate authority, and that's important, it's also important for us as peers to hold one another accountable too and say, Susan, that deadline was last Tuesday and I need your piece to do my part of the report. So, when will you get to that? and not just always wait for the big boss to hold each other accountable too. But that can be really tricky, right? And so the way that we can do that is to give each other feedback, as long as our team members know we have the intention. Our intention is to help them improve, not to make them look bad or embarrass them, but we're sharing feedback in a way to go, I know you can do better, or there's a different way to approach this, going to help you improve, and to share it in that way. So Pat Lencioni often says that feedback can be an act of love. And I think it's really, we don't think about love in the workplace, but that care for our teammates in the workplace too. So recently I received some feedback. I was on a group Zoom call, and afterwards the phone rang, and it was another colleague. It's not a teammate per se, but another consultant colleague. And she said, Kirsten, I have some feedback to give you. And I went, oh, okay. All right. And I kind of braced myself for it. And she said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you do this uptalk thing. So at the end of your sentences, you kind of end it with a question instead of, and I just thought, okay, Kirsten, just accept it and say thank you. And so I did. And I thought about it the next few days, and I was like, wow, she was really right. I'm really noticing how I'm doing this. And the reason why I was able to hear it and accept it is because I knew she cared about me. In fact, she even said that overtly. I care about you. I want you to be as an effective speaker as you can be, as an effective consultant. And this might be getting in your way. And because I knew that we had to trust a relationship and that she wanted to help me, it really meant a lot. And I actually wrote her personal note and said, I really appreciate this, because she didn't have to do that. She was taking a risk. And yet that's how we all get better too. And so the final behavior is shared results. And so we're not talking about individual results here. We're not talking about me and my needs, my promotion, my title, my sales goals that I hit or not. It's the collective results as a team, whatever team that you are on. Because the point of all of this is to be more effective as a team. And so are we achieving the shared results that we have set out for ourselves, right? And that assumes that we know what those clear results and goals are, but that's another story for another workshop. So now, as you've heard about these 5 behaviors, I'm curious, what comes most naturally to you? What's easiest for you? So as you heard about some of these, you probably go, yeah, I probably do that really great. And other ones like, oh, but yeah, please share in the chat what shows up for you and what's the easiest behavior for you to exhibit.
That's a tough one.
What are you thinking, Lauren?
I just from my experience, I'm actually not, just the first thing that comes up for me is the words you use and how you express yourself and how people hear you. Because I think sometimes it's just the way it's delivered. So I'm not really answering your question, but I do know that I'm much more, and people in general are much more, engaged if the delivery is the words that are used are, particularly when it's a conflict, it's used in conflict, or when we're talking about, accountability.
Sure. Are there some words here that kind of like trigger you a little bit, you think?
Like maybe asking a question like, I know that your piece was due on Thursday. Is there something that's in the way, as opposed to, that kind of thing. And so I think as we, and I think it's a practice behavior, really have to look at how you're communicating so that you can, how you're communicating, and it creates a much different outcome.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. The feedback and how we frame that up and it is tremendous. Yes. So I'm seeing in the chat here a lot of commitment results. I like to get stuff done. I like that smiley face. I like that, Stephanie. That's great. Commitment. Yeah. Trust. Most important. Yeah. You're right, Nicole. It's true. But trust isn't easy for everyone based on our personality style and the experiences we've had. It's a lot easier for some than others too. So thank you all for sharing that. That's great. Well, and that goes to show, there's a variety of responses here in the chat. So that means there's a variety of responses on your team, right? There's some things that certain people, it's easy for them to engage in those behaviors, and it's more challenging for others too. Yeah. So let's dive a little bit deeper into trust and how we can improve it in a virtual environment. So our goal is to create more vulnerability-based trust on our team. And it's when we feel okay to let down our guard, show our true selves, and be willing to ask for help. However, people often expect to be judged for showing vulnerability. So they might hesitate to be open and truly vulnerable. So if people aren't willing to be open and vulnerable, what impact do you think this might have on virtual teamwork? And how does that impact our stress levels? Whether or not we're willing to talk about mistakes or problems, even bring them up, things we're seeing, things we're concerned about too. So in a recent survey, Wiley asked 1,000 people, what is the most important factor that makes it easier for you to be vulnerable with your teammates? Was it getting to know your teammates, knowing that mistakes you make are forgiven, that there's not a lot of drama on your team, knowing what people will be direct and forthright with you, having the space to be vulnerable, having people that offer support, or people that show empathy and warmth? So the most common answer was getting to know your teammates. That is one of the main things that helps people become more comfortable, to be more open, create that psychological safety on teams too. So I'd like to give you this exercise that you can go back and use with your teams today. And it's a classic. It's been around for a while, and I've seen it be used so successfully. It looks very simple, but the sharing and the connections that come out of an exercise like this are amazing. You can go back and use it with your team even today. You just have to set aside time for it. So it's called the personal history exercise. And this is a low risk exercise where each team member shares for about 5 minutes the answers to these 3 questions. So the first is, where did you grow up? How many siblings do you have? And where do you fall in the birth order? There's always some interesting birth order discussions after this. And then describe a unique or interesting challenge or experience from your childhood. And all of us have challenges of being a kid, right? Whether it was like a first job that we got fired from, or a breakup, or a disability that we have. Maybe we grew up with a grandma instead of our parents. We all have challenges. And so to pick one thing that we can share with the group, and it's kind of a low risk exercise. We want that kind of medium level of sharing that's not surfacey, but not too deep, like therapy level sharing. We probably want to stay away from in the workplace, but enough where people can really start to see one another too. And I think what's super cool about this is that I've seen teams that have worked together for many, many years, and they still learn things about each other. And they understand kind of the point of view, the values, the perspectives that people have that informs who they are today and how they show up, right? And what's important to them too. So in order for this to be successful, there are a couple important ground rules to keep in mind and expectations that I think it's important to share with your group. So first is we want one member to share at a time, because the other team members are just going to be active listeners. They're not going to chime in. They're not going to hijack. They're not going to say, me too. It's kind of like kind of a group therapy session, in that, like an AA type group where just one person shares, right? Just to create that space for that person, they have the floor. We also want to remind everyone that what's shared is confidential, because if a person is willing to share a personal story and then out of context, they hear it was shared in another environment, that actually erodes trust. It doesn't build trust, right? You want the team leader to go first, because they're going to set the level of sharing for the team. And they are a powerful role model in this team dynamic. So that's very important. And once everyone's shared, you'll want a chance to debrief as well. And so here are some questions you can use. So more generally, what was this experience like for you? What was the impact on you or maybe the team? What did you learn? What surprised you? You can also talk about what were some commonalities you heard today, right? That sort of thing too. So just taking some time, 15, 20, even 30 minutes afterwards. So as you can see, if you've got 8 people on a team, it might be 45 minutes for the sharing, and then another 20, 30 minutes after that. It's a solid hour you want to allow. For your group, you might need more or less time depending on the size of your group. But it's really a fantastic way to go deeper pretty quickly and to get to know each other as human beings too. Not that you don't already know each other as human beings, but I mean to go to that next level of sharing too. And then you want to do this exercise on a regular basis. So with different question prompts, right? You're not going to repeat this exact same experience every month, but you might come up with different topics like, what's your favorite comfort food and why? Because comfort foods, those like trigger memories of that are like really deep for us or powerful for us. A favorite book or movie and why. So it's not just the movie, it's the why is that movie meaningful to you, right? Something great to do this month is your favorite holiday tradition. And that gives us a sense for the person and where they come from too. And so are there any questions about this personal history exercise, or Lauren, comments from you as you're hearing this?
It's so helpful. I know with our Vistage group, uh, we get together and we talk about our backgrounds. And when we do have an opportunity to do that, and it just changes the depth of the relationship and the trust that's built. And it makes such a difference. And it's so interesting because we do this in, let's say, I remember doing this with our girls in grade school, and we tend to forget that this is still something that we could be working on. And so it's so great to hear this again, because it's a reminder that we need this in our lives, and we need that level of connection.
Yes. Yep, it's true. It serves us way beyond kindergarten. I'm looking at the time, Lauren, and I'm realizing we're almost out of time, which is crazy, which means I talk too much.
No, this was so helpful.
Can I run through the last couple of things just to let people know what some options are?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be fast. So 5 behaviors. If you want to learn more about these concepts, we've got 2 different options for you. There's a personal development where people that are working in matrix organizations or on many project teams can learn to be a better teammate. And if you are the lucky winner today, you will get a personal development profile and a debrief about how you interact with these behaviors and how you can improve in those areas and what you're already doing well, right? And then there's a team development version, which is for intact teams to get them to function. So we go really kind of in depth about how they're interacting and ways to improve too. And that's great for senior leadership teams. What we've learned, and please connect. Find me on LinkedIn, sign up for our monthly leadership development newsletters. And I'm sorry that it went little fast at the end there, but I'll turn it back over to you, Lauren.
Great. So Laura.
Hi, I'm going to go on ahead and pull up my screen.
Yes, I'll stop sharing. Thank you, Jeff and Nicole.
Just one second, sorry. My PowerPoint went away. Okay, so thank you, Kirsten. That was so informative. And we'll be sharing this recording later on this week so that people, if they missed anything, can go on ahead and look back to review it in a little more detail. These are just some of our upcoming conversations. We are closing out this week with interview techniques for today's job market with Terry Smith. And then in January, we're going to be launching our leadership conversation series once again, starting with Isaac Dixon on January 12th to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace. Here is how to connect with both Mulberry Talent Partners and with Kirsten. And just in closing, thank you for choosing to fly with Mulberry. I know that you have a lot of options when it comes to webinars, and so we really appreciate you being here. And thank you again to Kirsten and to Lauren today.
Great. And I wanted to just mention that we are going to be posting the recording on LinkedIn later on this week, and we would love for you to like, comment, and share this incredibly valuable material. And happy first day of December, everyone. And we'll see you again after the first of the year for leadership conversations. And we have one more on Thursday, as Laura mentioned. So thank you so much, and we will close off and have a good week.
Thank you all. Nice to see you today. Take care.